For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 916, I call up H.R. 1069 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 8, H.R. 1069, a bill to prohibit the availability of federal education funds for elementary and secondary schools that receive direct or indirect support from the government of the People's Republic of China.
Pursuant to House Resolution 916, the amendment in the nature of substitute recommended by the Committee on Education and Workforce printed in the bill is adopted, and the bill as amended is considered read. The bill as amended shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Minority Committee on Education and Workforce or their respective designees. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, will each control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material on H.R. 1069.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of H.R. 1069. American classrooms are becoming battlegrounds for foreign influence. For years, my colleagues and I have sounded the alarm about adversaries exploiting our education system. Malign foreign entities like the Chinese Communist Party are working to undermine American values, not just on college campuses, but across our K-12 schools as well. This is not only an attack on education and academic integrity, it is a threat to our national security. Across U.S. colleges, the CCP established Confucius Institutes to push false narratives, whitewash history, and endear American students to the CCP while obscuring its brutal human rights abuses. But these propaganda operations didn't stop at higher education. In K-12 schools, Confucius classrooms sprang up, aiming to shape the minds of our youngest learners. At a 2023 subcommittee on early childhood, elementary, and secondary education hearing, Defending Education highlighted a report exposing nearly 2 decades of CCP efforts to influence thousands of children. At one point, more than 500 schools hosted Confucius classrooms, many located on U.S. military bases. That is no coincidence. Those programs are a deliberate attempt to undermine American values and compromise our security. That's why I proudly support H.R. 1069, the promoting responsible oversight to eliminate communist teachings for our kids, or the PROTECT Act, from Representative Kevin Hern and Representative Kevin Kiley. This legislation prohibits federal funds from going to any school that also accepts funding from the Chinese Communist Party. It also sets a clear precedent. The U.S. will not allow a foreign regime to dictate what our children learn. When schools accept CCP funding, they are effectively letting a totalitarian government decide their curriculum. In China, students are taught only what the Communist Party allows. America must never cede that authority. Confucius classrooms have never been reciprocated in China, where U.S.-style cultural exchanges on this scale are forbidden. The CCP is not interested in genuine cultural exchange or open dialogue. Its goal is indoctrination, teaching students that China is benevolent while erasing events like the Tiananmen Square massacre and ignoring the ongoing Uyghur genocide and other human rights abuses. By accepting CCP funding, schools shield students from the truth because the party does not want them to know it. The PROTECT Act gives schools a clear choice: federal funds or CCP funds, but not both. In the wake of years of learning loss and educational decline, schools should focus on student achievement, not spreading foreign propaganda. Under the Trump administration's leadership, we are restoring focus to the education system, putting students first and protecting them from authoritarian influences. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1069 to protect students, uphold American values, and safeguard our national security. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
And rise in opposition to H.R. 1069, the so-called Protect Our Kids Act. This bill would add a new stipulation that disqualifies public schools from receiving federal funds under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act if the school receives contributions, materials, or other resources from China or an individual or entity acting directly or indirectly on behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China. Now, the bill gives no guidance on what acting directly or indirectly on behalf of means, or how you're supposed to know, and how a parent's contribution to a school program should be evaluated. And really, are you supposed to scrutinize all parents' contributions or just those from parents of Chinese American students? H.R. 1069 would specifically prohibit federal funding for any school that has and operates the program sponsored by the Confucius Institutes or Confucius Classrooms. It's worth noting that although there may have been a lot of programs in the past, right now there may be as few as 5 Confucius Institutes in this country serving K through 12 students. And the provisions of this bill will have to be administered not by those 5 school systems, but every school district, 15,000 school districts, will have to administer the provisions of this bill. As written, the bill would create significant administrative burdens to our schools and chill community investment in our children. For example, a bill would disqualify a school from receiving federal funds simply by accepting donations from a Chinese immigrant if it turns out the immigrant is acting indirectly on behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China. Now, if you can find out. Now, the bill bestows upon the Secretary of Education the sole discretion of deciding if an individual is acting indirectly on behalf of the Chinese government, the very government department the Trump administration is actively dismantling. Without any additional funding or dedicated help, schools will have to become investigators and determine if an individual who wanted to donate to the school or participate in parents' contributions could possibly be tied to the Chinese government. The justified fear of losing critical federal funds would almost surely lead students to eye many well-meaning donations skeptically, sowing distrust in our neighbors. Now, note there's no limit to this level of funding. I mean, it doesn't say contributions over $1,000, over $10,000, any contribution. And it must be said that there's no credible evidence to support the claims that China is exerting any inappropriate or undue influence over America's K-12 public schools. Even the report from the group Parents Defending Education, which makes these allegations, offers speculation rather than verifiable incidents or actual influence. However, even if we're able to verify that China poses a credible threat to our K-12 schools, this bill, as written, does nothing to actually address any national security threats. Instead, it seeks to punish schools for accepting the educational materials or participating in cultural exchange programs. Actually, our schools would be the victims of the undue foreign influence, but instead of deterring the bad actors, the bill seeks to punish the victim and, in effect, punish our students. The bill is therefore poorly written, poorly tailored, misdirected, and ultimately counterproductive, and not a targeted national security measure. Similar to H.R. 1005 and 1049, which we considered yesterday, H.R. 1069, if passed, would force school districts already facing shortages of teachers and counselors and support staff, to divert critical time and resources from instructions to completing bureaucratic paperwork, and this is the very definition of an unfunded mandate. It imposes obligations on 15,000 school systems without offering any capacity or funding to meet that obligation. Lastly, we have to note that the Trump administration is in the process of trying to abolish the Department of Education, with key responsibilities being shifted to other agencies. We're left with a chaotic patchwork of authority, and no one apparently left to actually administer the provisions of this bill. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I recommend a no vote on the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn, who is the Common Sense bill sponsor as well as chair of the Republican Policy Committee.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 4 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of my bill, H.R. 1069, the Protect Our Kids Act, and I urge my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, to support this bill. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese Communist Party has been spreading its malign influence for over a decade. This initiative has one goal: to increase China's economic and political dominance over the United States and the world. Disguised as harmless global infrastructure, transportation, and production networks, this global campaign is anything but harmless. Education is one of the primary targets of the Belt and Road Initiative, and they're succeeding in their mission to indoctrinate American students with their communist ideals. Chinese state media has even bragged about the success of Confucius Institutes and other educational initiatives in spreading the CCP's influence. This doesn't stop our college campuses. Right now, China is invading our K-12 schools through Confucius classrooms. Over the last decade or more, the CCP has infiltrated our public education system, setting up Chinese language and cultural programs in primary and secondary schools. Similarly to the Confucius Institute model at our universities, China rapidly expanded these programs to over 1,000 established worldwide by 2017, over 500 which were in the United States. In exchange, their contracts allow China to staff those classrooms, provide curriculum, and require teachers to sign contracts, ensuring they do not damage the national interest of China. Make no mistake, this is not out of the kindness of their hearts. The CCP is not interested in helping American students learn Mandarin. They want to brainwash their children, plain and simple. Since 2013, the authoritarian government of the People's Republic of China has sent curriculum and PRC-trained teachers into hundreds of K-12 schools across America as an unofficial component of its global influence campaign. Concern over the threat posed by Confucius classrooms is not new. In 2020, Secretaries DeVos and Pompeo sent a letter to state education commissioners outlining their concern with these types of programs and urging schools to consider the threat they may pose to academic freedom. The State Department found that approval from the PRC's Minister of Education is required when filling teaching positions associated with Confucius classrooms. Concerns over the threat posed by Confucius classrooms is not always exclusive to the United States. In Australia, the New South Wales Department of Education ended the Confucius classroom presence in public schools due to concerns of potential propaganda, replacing the programs with Chinese language programs funded and managed solely by Australians. Similarly, in 2019, the Canadian province New Brunswick initiated a two-stage removal of Confucius Institute-funded programs from elementary and middle schools, once again due to the threat of Chinese propaganda. The CCP has committed countless violations of human rights, and its authoritarian agenda is antithetical to the democratic principles our country was founded on. Chinese propaganda has no place in our education system. We have taken important steps toward mitigating Chinese influence at our American universities by cracking down on Confucius Institutes. Now that the Chinese government has directed its attention toward our elementary and secondary schools, it is time we do the same and protect our children from the malign influence of the CCP. The Protect Our Kids Act would prohibit federal funding for any elementary or secondary school that continues to boast or host a Confucius classroom. Schools will be notified of these requirements and given guidance for how to comply. To be clear, This legislation is only concerned with programs funded or supported by the CCP. Language programs in schools that do not partner with the CCP are not threatened by this legislation. The only objective is to prevent CCP propaganda being taught in our kids. This should not be controversial. I'll say it again, protecting our kids from Chinese propaganda should not be controversial, and I urge a yes vote on this legislation, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield what time she may consume to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. McBath.
Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much to the Ranking Member of Education and Workforce. I just have to say, today we're here considering a bill that's named the Protect Our Kids Act, so I'm going to speak and shift this conversation a little bit in the direction I think we really need to be going. You know, this bill, Protect Our Kids Act, does absolutely nothing to protect our kids. Just 5 days after 3 children and a 21-year-old were shot and killed in a mass shooting at a birthday party in Stockton, California, is a level of tone deafness that I don't think I've seen during my 7 years here in Washington. There are 4 families that are burying their children this week. 4 families that are burying their kids, just like I had to when my son, Jordan, was murdered simply for playing loud music in his car. 8-year-old Journey Rose, 9-year-old Maya Lupian, and 14-year-old Amari Peterson will never get the experience that they deserve or the promise that this country offers. They will never get that chance, all because they went to a birthday party and this Congress refuses to do anything about it time and time again. I don't know how many times I have to stand here on this floor to debate, to talk about the numbers of children and people that are dying in this country, and we call this bill Protect Our Kids Act. It does absolutely nothing. You're deflecting over and over and over again against the real crimes against our children. But you want to bring this bill to the floor today that will do absolutely nothing to protect our children. The real way to protect kids is to keep them safe from unnecessary gun violence. That's what we should be doing with this time. But my Republican colleagues refuse to talk anything about protecting children from unnecessary gun violence. And over again, I cannot tell you how many times I'm meeting families every single day. I get alerts from my staff every single day of every mass murder, of every tragedy in this country, and it is overwhelming. So excuse me if we're going to sit here and talk about protect our kids. If you're really willing to do that, then you bring up gun violence prevention legislation. You bring up policy that really does the very thing that you are pretending through this bill to protect our children. There is no greater threat to our kids in school, no greater threat to them at church, at their birthday parties, or any other private or public space across this country than gun violence. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, that was a very important step that we took. We did really good work, not just for Democratic children, but for Republican children as well. But we must do more to keep our children safe. Shootings are the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in this country. And yes, my Republican colleagues, you have children and families that are dying by gun violence every single day, just like us here in the Democratic Party. But you would never know that from this bill or when we're listening to you, our Republican colleagues. But for people like me, for people who have buried their son or their loved one, their daughter, their big sister, or their little brother before their time, we know really what's at stake. We cannot continue to play this game over and over and over again, fooling the American people and telling them that we're protecting their interests, protecting their families, protecting their children with pieces of legislation like this that absolutely do nothing to protect our children. We know this cannot wait. And I'm just so sick and tired of the tone deafness of every time we get here on the floor and you want to put forth a piece of legislation that fools the American people into believing that we're really working on their interests, on their behalf, but really it's not doing that at all. We know that the longer we do nothing, the more likely it is for someone else to have their family torn apart like I have. For someone else to attend a wake or a funeral instead of a wedding or a graduation ceremony. It doesn't have to be this way. I just, if you want to say, celebrated the 12th anniversary of my son's murder. So if you want to talk about protecting our kids, let's really do that, not this facade. Columbine, Newtown, Las Vegas, Uvalde, Lewiston, Stockton. Your home does not have to be next, but trust me, my colleagues, every single one of us in this body has people that are dying every single day in our constituencies. We should be using this time to really protect our kids, not just act like we're protecting them while this Republican Congress does nothing about these tragedies at all. I encourage all of my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my friend and colleague, I want, and I think she knows, I certainly share her grief and cannot fathom the grief, especially during the past 12 years of the loss of her son. Protecting kids is a multifaceted process. We're talking about just one aspect. In our school systems today, that does not mean we disregard. We may have different approaches, but I certainly want my friend to know we're here. And I guess I'll leave it there at that point. I now am pleased. Could somebody get me another? This thing won't hold. I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, who is the bill's co-lead, as well as chair of the Subcommittee on Early Childhood, Elementary, and Secondary Education.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I introduced H.R. 1069, the Promoting Responsible Oversight to Eliminate Communist Teaching for Our Kids Act, in order to protect our kids and to protect our country. The Chinese Communist Party is responsible for severe human rights abuses and the suppression of fundamental freedoms, with a long and well-documented history of censorship, oppression, and disregard for human rights. But it is equally well understood that the CCP aggressively pushes its propaganda worldwide to reshape global narratives in its favor. That effort has extended into virtually every facet of American society, including, unfortunately, American classrooms. Findings from the State Department have revealed that CCP-funded so-called Confucius classrooms have operated in over 500 K-12 schools across the United States. Now, these programs, they're not about education. They're about influence. The CCP does not act with charitable intent. These programs exist because the CCP expects something in return: control over curriculum and influence over young minds. It is unacceptable that American school districts have entered into financial arrangements with entities tied to the CCP, an adversary of the United States and a regime with one of the worst human rights records in the world. The simple premise of this legislation is that no federal tax dollars should support schools that partner with the Chinese Communist Party. The Protect Our Kids Act puts that principle into law by ensuring that federal education funds are not available to schools that collaborate with, receive funding from, or otherwise engage in agreements with the government of the People's Republic of China. This includes partnerships with Confucius classrooms, language programs funded by the CCP, and instructional materials or personnel tied to the Chinese government. American education should teach American values, not communist propaganda. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and take a firm stand against foreign influence in our children's education. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close. Now reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Owens, who's Vice Chair of the Ed and Workforce Committee on the Education and Workforce Committee. He's Vice Chair of the Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Development. Mr. Owens.
The Super Bowl championship member from Utah is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 1069, the Protect Our Kids Act. For far too long, American education has been undermined from within by actors who have taken advantage of our free and open society to advance nefarious and anti-freedom objectives of the Chinese Communist Party. Under the veneer of cultural and educational exchange, the CCP and its operatives have restricted free speech, monitored Chinese students and faculty, and served as intelligence-gathering conduits on emerging American technologies. These soft power tactics are part of a broader strategy to cultivate networks of communist influence within our very institutions responsible for shaping the next generation of American patriots. These subversive efforts are not limited to our universities. The CCP has reached even into elementary classrooms, cultivating favorable attitudes towards Chinese Communist Party among our young students. With passage of the Protect Our Kids Act, schools that refuse to confront this reality will no longer be eligible for federal funds. Full stop. The message is straightforward and simple to education administrators who don't understand the concept of American patriotism. This behavior will not be tolerated and no longer subsidized by the American taxpayer. Under this Republican majority and this Trump administration, American education will be protected and renewed. Our classrooms will return to their rightful purpose, teaching and preserving our great American values. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I thank the Speaker. I now am pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Representative Kim, Chair of the Subcommittee on East Asia and the Pacific, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 1069, the Protect Our Kids Act. The Chinese Communist Party is executing the most sophisticated global influence campaign of our time. They are not just targeting our military or U.S. companies, they are targeting our children. One of the CCP's key tools is the Confucius Classroom program. These programs are funded, staffed, and overseen by the Chinese government, giving them direct influence over curriculum, teaching materials, and the content presented to American children. We cannot allow an authoritarian regime that censors information, rewrites history, and silences dissent to have any role in American education. Our classrooms must remain places of learning, not foreign influence. The Protect Our Kids Act sets a simple but necessary safeguard. If a school chooses to host a CCP-funded Confucius program, it should not receive federal taxpayer dollars. Simple as that. This bill upholds academic integrity, protects parents' rights over their child's schooling, counters communist propaganda, and strengthens our national security. The CCP is playing the long game, influencing minds early and often. We must meet this challenge head on. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill and stand firm against foreign indoctrination in America's schools. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Michigan
prepared to
reserves.
close.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much time do I have?
Gentleman has 19 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I yield myself the balance of the time. Mr. Speaker, when you hear the title Protect Our Kids Act, you wonder what this bill is all about. You might think protect kids from guns, protect kids from bullying, protect kids maybe from online predators. But no, this is from foreign influence from China. There's no credible evidence of any improper influence in K through 12 schools, yet this is what the bill is about. It imposes sweeping penalties that do nothing to enhance national security, only harm students. The apparent target of this legislation seems to be the maybe 5 school districts that have Confucius Institute programs, but it applies the provisions of the bill to 15,000 school systems in America. All of this unfolds while the Trump administration works to dismantle the Department of Education, leaving critical responsibilities scattered throughout agencies. This bill wastes critical resources without any apparent benefit, and therefore I urge up my colleagues to oppose the bill and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman's recognized.
H.R. 1069, the PROTECT Act, makes clear that schools receiving funding from the Chinese Communist Party will not receive federal dollars. For too long, schools have turned a blind eye to the CCP's demands for fear of losing CCP money. But every dollar came with strings attached, lessons glorifying tyranny, rewriting history, and indoctrinating students instead of teaching American values. Even more concerning, many of these schools were near U.S. military bases, raising risks of monitoring and surveillance of personnel. This is unacceptable. To protect our students and our national security, we must pass the PROTECT Act. It helps prevent foreign adversaries from exploiting our classrooms and promotes education grounded in truth, freedom, and American values. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support the legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 916, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to prohibit the availability of federal education funds for elementary and secondary schools that receive direct or indirect support from the government of the People's Republic of China.
The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is, for what purpose the gentleman for Virginia seek recognition?
Yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote in favor of the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this is a 15-minute vote on passage of H.R. 1069. This is a 15 will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of H.R. 1049. This first vote is a 15-minute vote.